Alright guys, we're back. We're working on the Traxxas TRX4M 118 scale crawlers, and I've been using these a lot lately, running them around the house, climbing pillows, bucking the dogs, climbing over the dogs, laying out some little courses in the house. It's snowing a lot, crappy winter outside, perfect indoor vehicle, and so we've just been running them around. And the one thing that we've noticed through all this, they're quite a bit of fun. They crawl really well. The Bronco performs a lot better than the Defender. That's because of the approach angles are better on the Bronco. We got a lot more accessories on the Defender, and it's also a lot taller than the Bronco. So the Bronco performs better, but I do think the Defender has the better tires on it. So if you swapped, so I think maybe this is why Traxxas did it, not really sure. These tires actually grip better, have better traction. These ones are scale, they're BF Goodrich KM3s, just like I have on my own personal Jeep. But they have a lot smoother tread, like really close scale tread, and I feel like I can get better crawl out of this one, but it doesn't do the angles and stuff that the Bronco does. The other thing that I've noticed with these is, after sitting for any amount of time, so anywhere from 5 minutes to 20 minutes or even overnight, that the shocks stick. And I haven't seen anybody talking about it, but both trucks do the exact same thing. And is what happens is, after sitting for a certain amount of time, especially like 15 minutes, if you try to push down on the vehicle, it has resistance. So you can see I'm pushing down on the rack here. Oh, and then it just popped loose. So now we got nice smooth. But they're sticky. Like, is what I'm thinking it is because of the small scale. Traxxas made a really tight tolerance, and it's that O-ring just gripping around the shock shaft really tightly, which is what it should be doing. You can see it kind of sticks. So if you display your vehicles at any kind of like pose like this on a rock, or you just have them sitting there because you want to look at them, and then you go to pick them up, they'll actually be stuck in this position. They unstick fairly easy, and while you're driving them, once you get the shocks moving, you know, they perform pretty well. I don't know how to fix that at this point. I don't know if it's a shock fluid issue, or, I mean, I wouldn't think so. But the shocks don't leak, and that's a really good thing. With a car this size, you would think, you know, you might have issues. The shocks don't leak. I don't know how to get rid of the stickiness, but right now is what I'm going to do is we're going to upgrade and just do a quick little video here of 9763 blue shock bodies. We're going to put these on my Defender. The Bronco is my girlfriend's, so we're going to go ahead and do the Defender, and we're going to do the aluminum shock bodies. These things were $12 each, so that's $24, and that is a little cheaper than ordering the whole GTM shock. I think they're GTM shocks, which is about $40 for the whole kit, and they're fully assembled, so they're easy to put on, but you still have to put oil in them. It's a nice little kit, but save a little bit of money. Well, we went this route, and this is what the hobby shop had where I picked these up. So we're gonna go ahead and just and we're gonna see if changing the fluid, I don't know what's in them right now, I will figure that out as we go along, if Traxxas's fluid is, you know, maybe changing it to more premium fluid will help it not stick anymore. I don't really know. So at this point in time, we're going to go ahead and we're going to pull all four wheels off, and we're going to go ahead and get the shocks off of the front. the front shocks on, filled and bled. We got one rear shock on. I'm going to show you how to do the complete shock. You need to pull it, unscrew it off. You need to remove the cap and drain the oil out. Get out as much as you can. Next step is you need to get your shock pliers or something where you can pinch it very low on the shock shaft without marring the shaft. You need to take the shock eyelet off like that. I'm going to push the shock shaft through at the top. Remove that. Then is what I figured out to do is I have an X-Acto knife here. You can use something that's very thin bladed and put it between the seam and the shock body on the plastic shock and just twist sideways. You see it pop that loose. Spin it over. You're not cutting or anything, you're just putting it in and twisting. So that removes the bottom cap. We're going to take our Allen driver and slightly pull and carefully pull out the O-rings. So you have two O-rings and a plastic spacer in between them. So that's that completely removes them. Here's the new aluminum shock body, and we have some 1-Up Racing O-ring grease, and we're going to use that to help with sealing and lubrication for putting it back together. So you got one O-ring in, then the spacer goes in next, and then a little bit of lube there, and then your bottom O-ring, just like so. Put on the bottom cap. Just snaps into place. Make sure it's all flush all the way around. I'm going to wipe off some of the excess grease from the outside. We're going to take the shock shaft, lightly dip it into the oil or into the grease, the O-ring grease. Now, if you don't have O-ring grease, you don't have some slime, you can use regular grease, or make sure you use some shock oil on the, and it just helps with the shock shaft going back through the O-rings to not tear up the O-rings. That's the whole goal of this. So we got the shock, everything moves freely. I went and looked through the manual, and okay, next, after you get the shock shaft put in, we're going to reinstall the eyelet, the shock rod end, and you're just going to twist this on until it snugs up. It does not cover all the threads. There actually is a small gap at the bottom, so don't try to you can see that little gap. Don't try to over tighten and strip them out, because it won't go any further than that. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to use 30 weight shock oil, which is what I put in the other three, and you're going to just doesn't take much. Lightly fill it in till the oil is cupped. Push the piston up and down until you get some of those air bubbles to the top. You're going to want to wait for, if you have somewhere to set them and let the air bubbles rise. It's not going to take very long. These shocks are so tiny. Wait about 5 minutes or so. And then the best thing that I noticed is you want to push the shaft all the way up, clear to the top. You might want to push some of that oil out. You're going to dab out some of the oil till you get a nice cup, which means it's just barely above the end of the shock shaft, and it's nice and cupped in there. You're going to take your shock cap, and you're going to notice that on one side there's a bleeder hole, this little tiny pinhole right there. You're going to want to put that upwards towards the sky, and that's going to let air out as you thread the shock body on. And you're going to want to rotate the shock body back and forth, because that is going to help bleed out some air. And is what's going to happen. So you're going to be able to tighten that down all the way like that. We have no rebound on the shock. There's no air forcing the shock shaft down, which I think on this truck is exactly what you want. You want full extension and full articulation of the shock. And if you have any air, so when you push it in and this shit comes out, you need to relieve some pressure. It's going to cause your shocks to be too stiff and act more sprung. Now that's my opinion on this little vehicle. I want the shocks to work all the way up full stroke. Now that we have the shock filled, I'll just use a little bit of glass cleaner here. Foaming glass cleaner will work, and we're just going to clean off that shock, get all the oil and the grease off of it that we put on, and that's going to help it stay a little bit cleaner so we don't make a big mess. That looks better. So we're going to slide this. The rear shocks had on one clip, the front did not. So there's one shock spacer clip. Install the spring. Install the spring retainer on the bottom. And that's that. Feels real good. Alright, so you're going to want to make sure your suspension link is lined up. The screw for the link also attaches the shock. Don't over tighten anything. I'm using the drill because it's faster. I always say quick video, but by the time I'm done trying to do it, they end up always being longer than I want. There we go. We have added the aluminum shock bodies. So now we have aluminum shocks, front and rear. They look pretty nice. A little better than plastic. Plastic ones were performing perfectly fine, but you know, part of this hobby is doing upgrades. We will find out if this oil will get rid of the stickiness that we had. You can definitely tell by the shocks being full. The original ones were about half full. It still felt pretty good, but now that you can tell they're full, you can feel how much smoother the shock actually feels. So I'm excited to get that going. This is the Defender. Same procedure will work for the Bronco. They're identical, just different bodies. I can't wait to next step on the Defender because it weighs a little more. I want to get the steel lower links. It's going to add a little bit more weight down low, and I'm going to do some brass pieces on the front to get some more weight because it has a tendency to rear over backwards. Best performer though, all in all, is going to be the Bronco. So if you're looking for one of these, this one has an awesome scale look, and I really like the Defender. I think I drove it more than the Bronco. The Bronco is also, but it performs better. It doesn't rear over backwards. You can see the overhang between the two. There's just more roof height, more overhang. I could do some modifications, but I kind of like the look of the Defender. And hopefully this video will help somebody save a little bit of money. It's really easy to just do the shock bodies instead of the whole kit. I don't see the benefit of doing the whole kit because the whole kit doesn't even come with springs. It's not filled with oil. So you still have to do that process. The only thing you really have to do extra is you have to pop the bottom cap off. Change the O-rings over, and remove the shock rod end a couple times. A little bit more work, but you're saving yourself a little bit of money there by doing that. So it's up to you how you guys want to do it, but hopefully this will help you with the shock body upgrade. Like, subscribe, and share. Thanks guys for watching.